مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. الثلاثاء الكبير، أهم يوم في جدول مواعيد الانتخابات التمهيدية الرئاسية الأميركية، جاء وانقضى، ومعه تلاشى أيضا قدر من الغموض بشأن منافسات الترشيح الديمقراطي والجمهوري. حققت وزيرة الخارجية السابقة هيلاري كلينتون ورجل الأعمال دونالد ترامب انتصارات كبيرة، ويبدوان أقرب من أي وقت مدى للفوز بترشيح حزبيهما. هل يمكن أن يكون هذا ممكنا حقا؟ هل يوشك الحزب الديمقراطي على أن يزكي في 2016 المرشحة التي خسرت السباق في 2008؟ هل سيرشح الحزب الجمهوري المحافظ وسطي سابق لم يتنافس أبدا لنيل منصب سياسي في حياته؟ أم في كلا الحالتين هل يستطيع شخص ما أو شيء ما وضع حد للأمر قبل نهايته؟ للشؤون السياسية الأمريكية عادة قواعد محددة وأنماط تاريخية واضحة، ولكن هذا العام لا قيمة لأي من القواعد والتاريخ ليس بدليل. فلمساعدتنا في فهم ما يحدث حقا في سباقنا الرئاسي، يسرني أن أرحب بالخبيرين السياسيين الرائعين إلينور كليفت وستيف كليمنز. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. I'm sitting here with Eleanor Clift and Steve Clemens to talk about American politics, and it's certainly been a wild ride so far. Thank you for joining us today. Super Tuesday has come and gone. We now know a lot more about both parties' nomination contests. Let's start with the Democrats. Eleanor, has Hillary Clinton done well enough? Is this race now over?
It's not quite over. There's still a number of states still to be holding primaries and caucuses. And on the Democratic side, delegates are awarded proportionally. So if Bernie Sanders continues to get, say, 40% of the vote in most of these states, he will accumulate a pile of delegates, and people will soon be asking, you know, what does he want at the convention, what influence does he want over the writing of the party platform, that sort of thing. Now, if Hillary Clinton does really score big in the next couple of rounds of the big states, I think you will hear chatter about, isn't it time for Bernie Sanders to get out? But the way I look at it, he's brought energy and young people into the process. She needs that energy and enthusiasm to continue. And I think she has to view him as her friend and not an enemy in this process. And I think in the end, she's the likely winner, and they'll be holding hands, and he'll be encouraging his voters to support her. So I think there's a happy ending on the Democratic side.
So Steve, is there any variable here?
And cynicism.
Yeah.
Eleanor is probably right, but I'm not completely sure that when you look at what is going to unfold, you have a lot of young women who are very ambivalent about Hillary Clinton. That just has to be noted, that Hillary is likely to win right now, but there's a big structural ambivalence about her, and there's excitement about Bernie Sanders and what he's brought into this campaign, which is to say the system is structurally corrupt and it's designed to work against working Americans, and he's made that palpable and important and politically potent. And Hillary Clinton and her $650,000 speaking fees from companies like Goldman Sachs has a problem there. So
why
I
is it
agree,
so difficult for Hillary Clinton to connect with young voters and, of all people, many women?
I think young women don't have the history of fighting for the women's rights that Hillary Clinton has been a champion of all the time she's in public service, and they feel that they're being insulted if people say to them, you know, don't you want a woman president? Shouldn't she be voting for a woman because you're a woman? And they are looking at Bernie Sanders, and he's telling them that he is creating a revolution, and there's going to be free college and lots of things that they want to hear. And I don't think they have any experience in the realities of Washington politics. And the young women that I speak to on college campuses are shocked when they learn that Bernie Sanders was in the House of Representatives for 17 years before he went into the Senate, and he's now in his second 6-year term in the Senate. And he was basically an obscure member of Congress. You know, where was he during all those years? Look at what Hillary Clinton was doing. And I don't think young women are opposed to Hillary Clinton. They like what Bernie is saying better, but I don't think they're going to not vote or, you know, vote for someone else or go vote for a Republican. I think they're going to be in the Hillary camp. But how Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders handle that transition is very important.
I just want to add that Hillary Clinton nonetheless is occupying the spot in this campaign as the conventional candidate, and there is a rebellion against conventional candidates at this moment. And so if she wins and she knocks back those people trying to raise these questions about economic fairness, and if she wins against those that are trying to run as anti-government, it'll be an interesting corner for the country, because she is coming off not as a transformational person, which is what I think she, you know, thought she would aspire to do when she ran.
She's not knocking back those arguments. She's adopted most of his arguments.
Well, let me ask you,
Right.
Steve. So you're right. I mean, Bernie Sanders has moved Hillary Clinton to the left.
Far left. Yeah.
To the left. Can she stay there as she moves to the general election? She naturally moves to the center. If she does she lose that enthusiasm? Does she lose the young people?
Eleanor?
Well, who is she going to be running against?
Yeah.
If she's running against Donald Trump, I don't think her speaking fees from Goldman Sachs are going to be an issue. I think she's running up big numbers among African Americans in the voters in the primaries, because she's basically hewing very closely to Barack Obama. That might not be such a great strategy in the fall. She may have to find some differences, but I don't think she has gone, you know, so far left that she can't come back. And I you know, again, who is she voting against? I think there's going to be plenty enthusiasm on the Democratic side, whoever the Republican is, especially with the Supreme Court at stake.
Okay, very good. So we're going to come back after the break.
Okay.
We're going to go from the rather civilized Democratic nomination contest to, I guess we say, a down and dirty fight among the Republicans in just a moment. Again, our panel of political experts includes Steve Clemens. Steve is the Washington editor-at-large for The Atlantic and editor of Atlantic Live. He is also a senior fellow and founder of the American Strategy Program at the New America Foundation, a prominent think tank here in Washington. Steve writes and speaks frequently about the Washington political scene, foreign policy, and national security issues. Sitting to his right is Eleanor Clift. Eleanor is a Washington media fixture, serving as one of our leading journalists and commentators for 40 years. She is currently the correspondent for The Daily Beast, an online publication where she covers the White House. She previously worked for Newsweek, where she covered a variety of beats and was a key member of the magazine's election team for many years. In addition, she's a panelist on the popular syndicated talk show, The McLaughlin Group, and she regularly comments about politics on the MSNBC network. So, now, the Republican contest. We have only 4 candidates left as of the taping of this show. Is Donald Trump the inevitable nominee? Eleanor?
He's not the inevitable nominee because the Republican Party establishment is trying to figure out everything they can do to prevent his nomination. In our process, you have to get a certain number of delegates. I think it's 1,297 or
Right.
on the Republican side. And unless he continues to win at the rate he's been winning, he might not reach that level. And there's huge sums of money being raised on the Republican side now to run attack ads against him in particularly in Florida and Ohio, where two of the remaining candidates are from, and to try to prevent Trump from winning those states. I think if Donald Trump does win Ohio on March 15 and Florida on March 15, both of those states are winner take all. If you win, you get all of the delegates. Then he would be pretty much on his way to getting the number of delegates that he needs. All kinds of scenarios floating around Washington trying to prevent his nomination, because I think the Republican Party fears that he would lose big and could lose the Senate for them. I think there's another side to that, but we can get into that later with your questions.
All right, well, Steve, take our viewers through some of this. Here's this very popular candidate bringing millions of voters out to vote, winning 2/3 of all the contests that he's in so far. Why aren't the leaders of the party delighted with a candidate that may stand a chance at getting the White House for them?
Because they know that structurally and into the future, a candidate that comes in with the views of Donald Trump that are just demonstrably racist, where he is essentially embraced, at least for a short time, something that sounded like white supremacy. He's praised leaders like Mussolini, Kim Jong-un, and Vladimir Putin, that these kinds of behaviors are ones that they know they can't win independent voters in the United States. And one of the things we don't discuss while we're talking about both parties, there are more independent voters that are not Republicans or Democrats in the United States than others. No one can win the presidency without them. So I think the Republican leadership is very scared that bringing a populist fascist in as their candidate is not a winning hand, and that they'll lose not only this race, but their party will be in disarray for a generation. I think those are the stakes. I agree mostly with what Eleanor just shared, but I think Donald Trump is going to win because the Republican Party has shown an unbelievable inability to do what's mathematically needed, which is to pull some of these other candidates out. You know, Donald Trump is sort of locked in to the Republican Party at about 35% at maximum. And he's winning with that number in all the other races because those that are opposed are dividing the rest. So it's a classic mathematical equation. And right now you're seeing the Republican Party be hijacked. And I think it is well on it. I think it's probably too late for the Republican Party establishment to unplug that.
Is it too late, or do you think they stand a good chance of keeping him below the threshold of delegates?
I think if John Kasich wins Ohio and Marco Rubio wins Florida, then you start doing the math. He would not reach the required number of delegates. And the delegates are required to stick with the candidate who earned them through the first ballot, but then it becomes a free-for-all. I think you had Mitt Romney, the former standard bearer for the Republican Party, deliver a devastating critique of Donald Trump, and there's talk, maybe would the party turn to Mitt Romney, maybe would they turn to the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. But this is a classic case now of the elites in the party pitted against the grassroots voters, and I agree with Steve that they're likely to just make those Trump supporters want their man even more. And if you look at Donald Trump's career in New York, he's well known to a lot of people in New York. He was on television with a reality show, The Apprentice. People around the country know him. I don't think he would have always been described as a populist fascist. He takes positions that are sort of convenient for the moment. And you have a lot of Republicans now, you know, running for the high ground saying, oh, they could not accept somebody who divides the party by race. It's a party that has played on racial fears for decades. And I'm not going to go through that history, but it's there. And so now to suddenly seem surprised that somebody's a bit more explicit about it seems disingenuous. And he also is defying Republican Party orthodoxy on trade. He's opposed to free trade. He actually said some nice things about Planned Parenthood, which the Republican establishment wants to defund. So you look at him and you think, how bad can he be compared to the other choices that are left standing on the stage?
Steve, is Donald Trump Hillary Clinton's preferred opponent come November?
I think that Hillary Clinton would do well against Ted Cruz, may do well against Donald Trump, but I think he's a wild card, and we just don't know. You know, when I think about the enthusiasm that supporters have that support Donald Trump versus what I fear is an ambivalence about Hillary Clinton, no matter how the equation is supposed to look. You're not supposed to be able to become president of the United States anymore without reaching out to Hispanic voters, to black voters, to, you know, creating a larger coalition of support. But if there's ambivalence for Hillary Clinton and there's just in the street enthusiasm for what Donald Trump means in the, you know, in the revolution that they feel, that's a worrisome and toxic combination. If she were to run against one of the more moderate candidates like a Marco Rubio or a John Kasich, I actually think Hillary would have a much tougher time.
So does Hillary want Donald Trump to win the Republican nomination?
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I think
Ted Cruz
it's
would be
likely that she would win a big victory against him because he wouldn't get any African American votes. It's unlikely he would do well in the Hispanic community. Mitt Romney got 27%. That was far short. A Republican needs about 40% of this very large and growing block of voters. I think Trump wouldn't come anywhere near that. But he does put a different set of voters into play, and those are kind of disaffected, white, working class voters, and their population is in some of those key Midwestern states, Pennsylvania specifically, Ohio. So he changes the electoral map math to some extent, and I think the Hillary people are smart enough to know they shouldn't take anything for granted. He's a very artful, canny, psychological player on the national scene.
So there's an interesting dynamic emerging among Republicans as to whether they will support Donald Trump should he be the nominee. Some Republican national security experts said will never serve. A very small number of Republican elected officials have begun to say, well, we can work with Trump, we'll endorse Trump. Should Trump be the nominee? Does the party itself split, Steve?
The party splits, but the party's been split for a while over a number of things, national security and foreign policy. What was very interesting about the letter of national security officials who said they wouldn't serve is that it actually brought a number of opponents back together who've been fighting in the trenches over foreign policy, and they all say they dislike Trump. I find that those moments only make him look bigger and better to his constituents. And as we saw with Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, who seemed to many to be a more centrist type of candidate, that he joined and supported Donald Trump. You have others, senators beginning to come out and support Trump. Once you look like the presumptive nominee, power has a way of changing the game and changing people's positions. There'll be an inside crowd and there'll be an outside crowd, but you're not going to see the whole Republican establishment walk away from their nominee. And as we saw in the debates the other night, each one of the candidates, despite calling out Trump as a fraud, a phony, a liar, all of them said that they would support him if he were to win the ticket.
A third party, a third candidate, is this a serious option if Trump is the Republican nominee?
There's a lot of talk about it, but the mechanics of it are not that easy. Somebody could perhaps sign on to one of the existing fringe parties, the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party. It's hard to see how a person doing that would win. They would be a spoiler and might make it easier for Hillary Clinton to win, which is, I think, not what Republicans want either. I do think that this does signal the breakup of the Republican Party as we know it. Now, whether a new reform party under the same label will emerge from the wreckage, I don't think it's going to happen in the weeks remaining in the primary process, but I think that's probably going to happen afterwards.
The breakup of the Republican Party, do you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible. I don't think it's necessarily the case. I think that you have a transition underway in which the party has been taken. We've seen other points in American history where parties have been hijacked by movements and views change. And as bad as Donald Trump is, I tell you, we're doing a show with a lot of people internationally watching, it's very important to keep in mind that even with someone like Donald Trump coming in, they're not a monarch with unlimited power. There's a system of checks and balances. There are ways in which the government is going to continue to operate in predictable ways. And most of what Donald Trump is talking about, he, as President of the United States, can't do. So it's very important to keep, I think, a sensibility about what we're talking about. And when that is the case, I think talking about the complete dissolution of the Republican Party could happen, but hard to imagine because there are other balancing factors that may, in fact, keep the party together, even with Trump temporarily at the head.
Well, I have to tell you, from someone whose formative years were all about the Democratic Party fighting with each other, the idea that we're even talking about the possibility of the implosion of the Republican Party underscores how far American politics has come. Eleanor Clift, Steve Clemens, thank you so much for joining us today on Dakhel, Washington. بهذا نصل إلى نهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول دور السياسة الخارجية في حملتنا الانتخابية، أرجو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على عنوان البريد الإلكتروني التالي insidewashington@alhurra.com. معكم روبرت ساتلوف. شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.